How much work is involved in owning a rental property? So you buy a house or a duplex or a triplex or something, and you rent it out to tenants. So you are officially a rental property investor, rental property owner. How much work does this take? Well, I'll preface all of this with it should take some work on the front end to actually learn what you're doing. Don't just go buy any property, because most properties aren't actually going to be profitable as rental properties. So you really want to, it seems really straightforward. So it's tempting to not think that you need to learn a lot of details about the strategy, but you do. Don't go diving in and making crazy wild investments. But so that's a little bit of work on the front end. The good news is once you do that initial work time to get education and kind of build a foundation of knowledge so you know what you're doing, then that'll carry you through, you'll be learning along the way, but you won't have to dedicate that much time again. It's just that initial thing. So please put a little bit of work into the front and into the front end, and just make sure that you understand what you're doing. Going forward, it's time to buy properties. How much work is this going to take? Well, here's the deal. I say this on so many of my videos and talking about everything. There is a spectrum. Everything from the least risky way to do it to the most risky, and same with how much work. You can buy something that takes a minimal amount of work to taking the most amount of work. Same with time. How much time, effort, skill, like what's better for beginner investors, what's better for advanced investors. There's a whole continuous spectrum. So I tend to talk about the ends of the spectrum, least risky and most risky, but then there's everything in between. Nobody ever said real estate investing is a straightforward, easy industry. It's not. Don't even get me started on that. For so many reasons, it's not that easy, but always be cognizant of the spectrum. So the answer to the question is, how much time or how much work do you need to put into a rental property, or once you own them? Well, depends on how you do it. So here's my example for what I do. I buy turnkey rental properties. And if you've seen any of my videos, you've seen me ramble on about turnkey rental properties. But what I like about turnkeys is I can't be 100% hands-off, but I am really freaking hands-off in comparison to the rest of that spectrum. I think turnkey rental properties are one of the most hands-off options to own a rental property. And I own the properties. So I own the property, I have the tenants, and I'm collecting the cash flow every month. But here's the trick. Turnkeys, and you can do this with anything, whether it's turnkey or not, all the positions of work that are required to maintain and make those properties successful, I have outsourced. So instead of me being the landlord on the property, I have a property manager to do that work. Turnkey rental properties come fully rehabbed. So I'm not out there putting a lot of work into a rehab. So every component of a successful rental property in my configuration of how I have them is taken care of by somebody else. My only job at that point, in terms of what requires work, is much like I was talking about the front end of knowledge of rental properties. The front end for me is when I'm shopping for properties, I need to do really thorough due diligence to ensure that I'm getting the property as it's actually advertised. The numbers check out, the rehab is complete, I can do it, check it via property inspection, a professional property inspection. So on the front end, I'm doing a good chunk of work because I just need to verify what I'm getting. But once I own that property, I would say of all the properties I own, in a normal year, I don't know that I can even say that I spend an hour in a year. 1 hour per year, I don't think I spend on all my properties in a normal year. Now, not every year is normal. This year, I've actually done some hiring and firing of property managers. So that's taken a lot more time. And then once the properties moved over to the new manager, there were a lot more conversations that we had, like, just kind of logistical stuff. So I would say in a bad year, well, not a bad year, but like a less than perfect year, I mean, grand total combined, I definitely don't spend more than 40 hours, which is like a week's worth of work. I can't imagine that I even spend that much and for a whole year, and that's in a rough year. So I go the hands-off route. So the front end is the due diligence, and then after that, my job is, because what I don't want to do, and I've seen people do this, is if you have a property manager, they just check out. They're like, someone else is taking care of it, no problem, like, bye. but that, like, you want to keep one eye on the manager because you want to make sure they're still performing. So again, to conclude what work I do on my rental properties, up front for sure. And the due diligence period is only like 2 to 3 weeks. So this is only like 2 to 3 weeks of, really kind of diving into this property just once before I buy it. So the due diligence on the front end, and then just keeping an eye on the manager after that. And if I need to make changes or I need to step up and make a decision, then I'm doing that. But that is so passive. And all of those things, I have never, all of my properties are out of state. Well, most of them. For all my out of state properties, when that's happened, I've never had to go there. I've been able to do everything over the phone. So that's a tremendous amount of freedom from not having to work on my rental property. Now, totally different end of the spectrum. Let's say you buy just a property that is like falling freaking apart. And not to say these can't be profitable, they can, but it's an advanced rental property, if you will. Because now, first of all, you need to have the experience and the skill to understand what kind of distressed property is going to make for a successful property later. With turnkeys, it's either performing or it's not, because it's already done. So I don't really have to know like the background as to whether it's potentially going to work or not. It's either working then or not. With a hardcore rehab property, you don't have proof to know for sure that when you finish that rehab, it's going to perform as you expect. So, so that needs to take a little bit of work, especially learning it, but also like whether that's negotiating the deals or finding the property. Turnkeys, I can just go to a website and shop for them and it's easy peasy. But for hardcore rehabs, you may have to do a little bit more work to find the property in the first place. So then you have to buy the property. It may be more complex because, you may not be able to get financing for that dilapidated of a property. I'm certain I didn't say that word right, but I have multiple videos at this point where I've tried to say that word and I'm not sure I've hit it yet. So English was not my major in college. It was much more math related. So you may have a hard time getting financing. So maybe you're into advanced financing skills. So then you got to get all that in place. Then you buy this property. Well, now you have to rehab it. And rehabs, I mean, it could be anywhere from cosmetic to like a full-on near redevelopment. And so in those cases, you could be I know investors who do this full time and they literally work 40 to 80 hours a week on their properties because it's their full-time job. So you could basically give yourself a full-time plus job doing rental properties if you go that route. And then once the rehab's done and all that, if you put tenants in, well, now you're the one screening the tenants, placing the tenants, then you're much more hands-off. But what if the tenant calls in the middle of the night with a maintenance problem? Well, that's work on your part because you either have to go fix it or you have to call a handyman or coordinate that or whatever. So for the record, I think I probably made the hands-on version sound terrible. That's not my intention, but it is also a reality that you need to understand because a lot of people dive into real estate investing thinking it's investing. Well, it is kind of always that, but people don't realize how much work can go into a lot of the strategies. Like wholesaling, for example, is all work, no investment. You're doing a job. It's related to investing, but it's a job. So with a rental property, the two ends of the spectrum, you can buy everything, you can invest in a property where basically everything's done for you and you can be as hands-off as possible, not 100% hands-off, but as hands-off as possible, or you can buy a super advanced rehab project. So check out the video that I actually say, like, which route should you go on that? Like, should you buy the rehab project or the BRRRR property? BRRRR is an acronym for these value add deals, or should you buy turnkey? It completely depends on your situation, but look in the comments for the link to that video. And hopefully this helps paint a bigger picture for you to start understanding which option might be best for you. And if you like doing this kind of work, have at it. Like, make it a full-time job. Like, how perfect would that be if you really enjoy it and now you've given yourself a job that you love? If you're like me and you don't like any of that kind of work and you prefer to ski, snowboard, play at the beach, play with your dogs, watch Netflix, whatever, then you want to be thinking about something that takes less work and what does that involve? And so it's just an exploration into all the strategies. So like real estate investing in general, you have like rental properties, flipping, wholesaling, those strategies. But if you choose one of those strategies, let's say rental properties, how do you want to do that? Do you want turnkey? Do you want rehab job? Where in the middle? So always be thinking about these things and be clear on what they all involve. So that way you can make a more educated decision.